Everyone in your life has quietly agreed on a story about you, that you're behind, that you never quite figured the money part out. They've seen the bike, the same four shirts, the phone 2 generations old, and they've drawn the obvious conclusion, the kind conclusion, the one that lets them feel a little sorry for you, and you have never once corrected them because the truth is worth $600 million dollars and the story is worth more. That's the part that would confuse them, if they knew. Not the number, the choice. They'd understand a man who has nothing and looks like it. They'd understand a man who has everything and shows it. What they wouldn't understand is the third thing, the one you actually are. A man who has everything and has spent years quietly, carefully, making sure it looks like nothing at all. So, let me tell you why. Not to convince you to do the same. Most people never have to make this particular choice, and the ones who do usually make it the other way, loudly, at the first opportunity. But the reasons are worth understanding because they're not really about money. They never are. Start with the bike. It's a good bike, not an expensive one. You bought it 8 years ago for a little more than $200, and the chain has been replaced twice, and the seat is worn to the exact shape of you, and every morning you ride it to the place you work, past cars you could buy the dealership that sold them, and you feel, on that bike, something you have never once felt inside those cars. You feel like yourself. That's not a slogan, it's a mechanical fact. The bike doesn't perform anything. It just takes you where you're going, quietly, in the cold, and asks nothing of you but that you pedal. There is a particular stretch of your ride, a long, flat road just after the light, where the wind comes off the water and the whole city is still half asleep. And on that stretch, you are not a man worth $600 million. You are just a man on a bike, cold, awake, alive, going somewhere. You would not trade that stretch of road for any car ever built, and no one, watching you ride it, would believe you if you told them so. The coworker in the leased sedan feels sorry for you. You know he does. You've seen the particular softness that comes into people's faces when they've decided you're the one who didn't make it. It's a gentle look. There's nothing cruel in it. And here is the first strange thing you learned, the thing that surprised you. You don't mind it. You thought you would. You thought the pity would itch, that some proud part of you would need to correct the record. It doesn't, and it doesn't, because the pity is aimed at a man who doesn't exist, a man they invented out of a bike and 4 shirts, and you can stand inside that invented man like a coat and be perfectly warm, and no one can reach the actual you at all. The pity is a wall you get to hide behind, and you have come to understand slowly, over years, that a wall you chose is worth more than almost anything money can buy directly. Because here is what visibility costs, and this is the part nobody who hasn't had money can quite believe. So, I'll go slowly. The moment people know the number, you stop being a person. You become a door. Every interaction, every single one, gets a second layer underneath it. A quiet current running below the words. And the current is always the same question. What can I get? Not from everyone, not maliciously. Most of them wouldn't even recognize it in themselves, would be genuinely hurt if you named it. But it's there. It's in the brother-in-law who mentions his business idea a half second too eagerly, who has clearly rehearsed the casualness of it. It's in the friend who starts letting you pick up every check, not out of greed, just because at some point it stopped feeling like your money and started feeling like the group's money, a shared resource you happen to be holding. It's in the way a room quietly reorganizes itself around you the instant the number is known, everyone tilting toward you a few degrees, like plants toward a window, without a single person deciding to do it. You've watched it happen to people who let their numbers show. You watched the number walk into the room first and the person trail in behind it, an afterthought to their own fortune. And after a while, the person just stopped showing up at all. Because why would they? when the number was so much more interesting to everyone present than the man attached to it. They threw parties and were the loneliest person at them. They were surrounded, always, and known by no one. You watched that happen more than once to men who had what you have, and you made a different decision. You decided early that you would rather be a person than a door. That was the whole decision, really. Everything else, the bike, the coat, the coffee, the 11 years with the same barber, all of it is just the maintenance of that one decision, made once and defended daily. So you maintain it. On a Tuesday, this looks like nothing. It looks like a man in a fray cuffed coat buying the store brand coffee, not because he's counting the dollars, but because he genuinely cannot taste the difference and never learned to pretend he could. It looks like a phone you don't upgrade because the old one still makes calls and still shows you the weather and still does every single thing you have ever actually needed a phone to do. It looks like a haircut from the same place for 11 years from a man named Sal who thinks you drive a delivery route and who tells you about his daughter's college applications while he works and worries out loud about the tuition. And you sit there worth $600 million and you listen and you say, "The tuition's a monster these days, isn't it?" And you leave a normal tip, a good tip, not a strange one, and you walk out. Sal is one of your favorite people alive. And Sal will never know a single true thing about your finances. And that is precisely why the friendship is clean. When Sal is kind to you, it's just kindness. It isn't an investment. It isn't a man being warm to a number in the hope the number will be warm back. Do you understand how rare that becomes once the number is known? A kindness with nothing underneath it. A person glad to see you for no reason connected to what you could do for them. You have spent $600 million worth of caution to keep a small handful of kindnesses clean, and it is the best money you never spent. Now, I want to be honest about the other side of this, because a story that only sells you the upside is a story that's trying to sell you something, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to tell you the whole shape of it, including the parts that don't flatter the choice. It's lonely, not always, not even mostly, but there's a specific loneliness that lives inside a secret this size, and it visits you at specific, predictable times. It visits you when something wonderful happens, some deal closes, some number your younger self would have wept just to imagine quietly appears on a screen. And you look up from that screen, and there is no one in your life you can tell. Not one person. Your closest friend would need the entire architecture explained to him first, 8 years of careful invisibility, and the explaining would change everything, would turn Sal's chair into a negotiation, and your brother-in-law's dinners into auditions, and every clean kindness you've protected into a transaction with a history. So you swallow it. You let the wonderful thing be a thing that happened only to you, witnessed by no one, and you go make yourself a coffee with the store brand grounds, and the quiet in the kitchen is a slightly different quiet than it was a minute ago. That's the tax, not the money, the unwitnessed life. You pay it in silence, and you pay it alone, and you pay it precisely because keeping the life unwitnessed was the entire point. There was a night, a few years in, when you almost told someone, a good friend, a real one, the kind you don't make many of after 30. Second drink, and it rose up in your throat, the whole thing, the sheer human need to be seen just once by someone who actually knew what he was looking at. And you looked at his face across the table, open and warm and completely unaware, laughing at something, and you understood in that one clean second that telling him would be for you and not for him, that it would hand him a weight he never asked to carry, that the moment he knew, he would start doing math he didn't want to do quietly for the rest of your friendship, wondering if he should have offered to pay more times over the years, wondering what you really thought of his apartment, his 10-year-old car, the vacation he'd been so proud of, recalibrating 100 small memories in the new light of the number, recalibrating a friendship that had been, right up until that second, mercifully, beautifully flat. So you swallowed it again, you ordered water, you let the moment pass, and you let him keep the friend he thought he had, which was the truer gift, the more expensive gift, even though he will never know you gave it to him. This is the thing about real wealth that the loud version gets exactly, precisely backwards. The loud version thinks money is for building a taller version of yourself, a version other people have to look up at. And you understand from the inside, from years of living in it, that the tallest thing money ever built for you was not a version of yourself at all. It was a room nobody can see into. Privacy is the real penthouse, not a view of the city from a great height, a place the city cannot turn around and view you back. Think about what the number actually protects when you hold it quietly instead of spending it loudly. It protects your mornings, which belong to you and to the cold, flat road by the water, and not to anyone's expectations of how a man worth $600 million dollars ought to be spending his time. It protects your friendships, which stay friendships instead of slowly becoming accounts. It protects your children, if you have them, from growing up as the wealthy kids, from that particular slow rot that sets in when a person never has to become anything, because they were already, from birth, a number, and everyone around them treated them like one. It protects the single thing that money is worst at protecting the moment you let it show, which is an ordinary human life, lived at a human scale, full of small daily frictions that are quietly good for a person. The store brand coffee, the cold ride, the wait in line, the haircut where you listen to Sal worry about tuition. The loud man buys his way out of every friction he can find: frictionless car, frictionless house, frictionless line he never has to stand in, and he calls the whole project winning. And then he wonders, somewhere around 60, why nothing touches him anymore, why nothing feels like anything. Friction is what feeling is made of. You get to feel your life because you refuse to buy your way out of it. You kept your frictions on purpose, and they were, in their own strange way, expensive to keep. It costs a something real to stay ordinary when you could stop. And the money itself, the actual 600 million, does what money is quietly for when you finally stop asking it to perform for an audience. It compounds, it sits there in its quiet architecture, and it grows, not because you're watching it, but precisely because you're not. Because you're not bleeding it back out through a lifestyle engineered to be seen. The loud man's fortune is a fire. He has to keep feeding it. The house, and then the second house, and the cars, and the watches, and the table at the restaurant where they know his name, and the whole running apparatus of being visibly, unmistakably rich. All of it costs a fortune to operate, and all of it produces nothing but the brief warmth of other people's attention, which cools the exact instant he stops paying for it. His fortune is a fire that only stays warm as long as he keeps throwing money into it. Your fortune is not a fire, it's a foundation. It doesn't warm a single face in a single restaurant. It just holds quietly, invisibly, under everything you have, and it will still be holding, still growing, long after the loud man's fire has burned all the way down to the cost of maintaining the ashes. But I told you, I'd give you the whole shape of it. So here's the harder truth, sitting underneath the clean one. Sometimes you are not sure the privacy is still a choice. Sometimes you wonder if it quietly became a cage, one you built so carefully, so well, that you stopped being able to see the bars. Because a secret you keep for 8 years stops being a thing you are doing and starts, somewhere along the way, being a thing you are. You have organized an entire life around not being seen. And there are nights you lie awake and you genuinely cannot tell the difference anymore between privacy and hiding, between protecting your ordinary life and simply being afraid to find out whether anyone would still choose you if they knew. That's the question at the bottom of the well, the one you don't lower the bucket into very often. If they knew, would it change? And if it would change, what does that say about them? About the friendships you were so proud of keeping clean? And if it wouldn't change anything at all, then what exactly have you been protecting all these years so carefully at such cost and from whom? You don't have a clean answer. That's the honest part. And I promised you honest. A man who tells you he is completely at peace with a secret this size is a man who simply hasn't looked at it hard enough, or is lying, possibly to himself. You've looked at it. You look at it more than you'd like to, and it is not all peace down there. There's peace, real peace, near the surface, and then underneath the peace, there's a fear, and the fear is patient, and the fear is that the very invisibility that protected your life may also, just as quietly, have kept you from fully living it, that you traded being known for being safe, and that the trade was probably on balance the right one, and that you will never, ever be completely sure. Still, given all of it, the loneliness and the unwitnessed wins and the well you try not to look into, given the entire honest cost of it, you would make the same choice again. And you know exactly why. Because you've watched the alternative up close. You've watched what happens to people when the number walks into the room ahead of them. You've watched them get everything money can possibly buy and lose the one thing it cannot, the plain, uncalculated, unearned regard of another human being who genuinely wants nothing from them. You have seen the loneliness on that side too, and it is worse, measurably worse, because it comes to them disguised as company. A room full of people all tilted a few degrees toward your number is somehow a lonelier room than a quiet kitchen at dawn where at least the quiet is honest, at least the quiet isn't pretending to be something else. So, you ride the bike, you wear the coat with the fray at the cuff, you buy the store brand coffee you genuinely can't taste past. You let Sal think you drive a route and you listen to him about his daughter, and you leave a normal, good, unremarkable tip. You let your coworker feel his small, kind sorrow in the parking lot, and you let the whole wide world keep the comfortable, incorrect, gentle story it has quietly agreed upon about you. And you keep the true one for yourself, tucked somewhere it cannot be spent, or borrowed against, or turned, in someone else's mind, into a door. And here is where I hand it back to you, because this was never really about a man with $600 million and a $200 bike. That man is rare. You will very likely never be him, and never knowingly meet him, though you may have already passed him on the street and felt a little sorry for him. But the choice underneath his whole life is not rare at all. It is yours too, at your own scale, whatever your own number happens to be. Because you have a version of this. Everyone does. Something true about you that you keep deliberately quiet, not because it is shameful, but because showing it would change the way people hold you. Maybe it's money, a little of it, or a lot. Maybe it's a hurt you've never set down in front of anyone. Maybe it's an ambition so large you're embarrassed to say it out loud in a normal voice, or a soft place somewhere in you that you long ago decided the world doesn't get to touch. Everyone is running some version of the fray cuffed coat. Everyone is maintaining some gap between the story people have all agreed on and the truer thing sitting quietly underneath it. And everyone pays some version of the same tax, the small, persistent loneliness of being slightly unknown in exchange for the safety of not being fully seen. The man on the bike just runs the most extreme version of a thing you are already, right now, quietly doing. So the question was never really whether to hide the number. Everyone hides some number. Everyone rides some version of the bike. The question is the one at the bottom of his well, the one he still can't answer after 8 years, and neither, if you're being honest with yourself here, can you. You've kept something quiet for a long time, some true and heavy thing, and you've told yourself, reasonably, that it's to protect the people around you, to keep the friendships clean, to keep your mornings your own. And maybe that's true. It probably even is. But some ordinary Tuesday, riding your own version of that bike through your own version of that cold, you might finally let yourself ask the harder question, sitting just underneath the easy one. Not what the secret is protecting, who it's been keeping out, and whether, after all these years of keeping it so well, you would even know how to let them back in.